Hi, everybody. Welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. This is episode 3 of the Antichrist playlist, and we're going to be reading part of this article out of Millennial Star. Saturday, April 30th, 1853. This is one of the earlier publications that I can find that talks about this concept of the Antichrist and who is the Antichrist. So what is the Millennial Star? In case you don't know, I'm going to refer to the Interpreter Foundation. This is a great resource for scholarly work. It says here, the Latter-day Saints Millennial Star was the official publication of the church in the British Isles from 1840 to 1870. Parley P. Pratt, an apostle of the church and the first editor of the periodical, outlined its purpose in his first issue, May 1840. Quote, "The Millennial Star will stand aloof from the common political and commercial news of the day. Its columns will be devoted to the spread of the fullness of the gospel, the restoration of the ancient principles of Christianity, the gathering of Israel, the rolling forth of the kingdom of God among the nations, the signs of the times, in short, whatever is shown forth indicative of the coming of the Son of Man and the ushering in of his universal reign on the earth." End quote. The presidents of the British missions were always listed as the editors, among whom were 5 future presidents of the church: Wilford Woodruff, Joseph F. Smith, Heber J. Grant, George Albert Smith, and David O. McKay. The Millennial Star was officially retired in 1970 when it was subsumed into the Ensign, the English language magazine for adults throughout the church, starting in 1971. Okay, and if you go to the Wikipedia article for Millennial Star, it explains the same thing. It has the list of editors year by year. In the article that we're going to read, it seems that it was written by this editor, Samuel W. Richards. And here's a picture of him right here. Keep in mind, a lot of people like to try and discredit certain publications if it disagrees with their point of view. This is a publication that's cited all the time on the church website. Right now, I just have selected books and lessons, and you can see Millennial Star is always referenced all the time, both in books and lessons, also in general conference. So this is a credible publication in case there's any doubt. So let's go to BYU's website where they have the Millennial Star. This particular article is divided into 2 issues. I'm only going to be reading from this first one, but if you want to read the rest of what we're about to read, I will leave the link for it in the description below. The second half is in number 19 of volume 15. We are going to be reading out of number 18 of volume 15. Okay? The coming crisis, how to meet it. A great and awful crisis is at hand. Such a crisis was never known before since the foundation of the world. All nations are looking through the misty future in order to decry, if possible, what is about to happen. Many sermons have been preached, many speeches have been made, and some pamphlets have been published, with the hope of lifting the veil of the future. Yet, none of the servants of God, who have the testimony of Jesus, which is the spirit of prophecy, can unfold the mysteries of the future. They can give the trump a certain sound, and their counsel will not be guesswork. God will do nothing except he reveal his secrets to his servants, the prophets. God, the Lord God of Israel, will take the control of these great events which are shortly to come to pass. Not a sparrow will fall to the ground without his notice, but his servant will be fully advised of every important event that is to transpire. They will be the heralds of blessings and also of vengeance. For the Lord hath a controversy with all nations, and the hour of recompense is at hand. But says the reader, I would like to know of what this crisis is to consist. Who are the contesting parties? Well, reader, if you will be patient and honest-hearted, praying withal, with unceasing diligence and thanksgiving to God, you shall have the keys of such knowledge as the sectarian priests of Christendom are by no means able to reveal. And we've talked about this before. Let me just stop here. We cannot go to other Christian denominations for the interpretation of Scripture or doctrine or anything like that. They do, the best that they can with what they have. But you and I, we have the restored church. Let's stick to that. Let's stick to modern day revelation in scriptures and clarifications and living prophets and apostles. All right, continuing. Because they are only revealed to God's servants, the prophets. Okay, go up to the next column. Perhaps you will be disappointed if I tell you that the time is coming, and now is, when not only God, the highest of all, shall be revealed in spirit and in mighty power, but the devil, or Satan, also will be revealed in signs and wonders and in mighty deeds. This, dear reader, is the great key to all the marvelous events that are to transpire shortly upon the earth. Now, just stop right here and pause and mark emphatically this key. Then you and I will proceed to unlock the mysteries and to prepare ourselves to the battle. For there will be no neutrals in the approaching controversy. I say again that God, the highest of all, will make bare his arm in the eyes of all nations, and the heavens even will be rent, and the lightning down of his power will be felt by all nations. But this is not all. Satan also will be revealed. Now, we're familiar with this language. We just went over it in the last video. In a very literal sense, Satan was revealed by Joseph Smith when it seemed as though he was attempting to stop the office of high priesthood from being conferred on the elders of the church in showing his own power. Joseph Smith prophesied the day before that Satan would be revealed, and sure enough, he was, as the one who has attempted to stop the work of salvation during this entire history of the world, but especially since the coming of Christ. All right, continuing. He has made some manifestations of his power in different periods of the world, but never before has there been such an array of numbers on his side. Never before such a consolidation of armies and rulers. Never before has there been such an imposing and overwhelming exhibition of miracles as Satan will shortly make manifest. Don't suppose for a moment that I am uttering dark sayings or speaking unadvisedly upon speculation or the strength of mere human opinion. Don't tell me about popes and prelates sitting in the temple of God as God. Stop. We know that there's all sorts of speculation about the Antichrist, and it's based off of misunderstandings of the scriptures, misunderstanding of the great apostasy, the titles of Satan, and what's been going on since Christ was crucified and resurrected on the earth. So people come up with all sorts of guesses, including the Pope and billionaires and presidents and prime ministers and dictators and so on and so forth, just endlessly guessing who the Antichrist is going to be. But it says here, don't tell me about popes and prelates sitting in the temple of God as God. One far greater than any pope or prelate is soon to be revealed, and he will claim to be worshipped as God. Now remember, that is no modern wicked man that is going to claim divine honors. No, it is the old serpent, the devil. He it is that will head the opposition against God and his Christ. And he, the son of perdition it is, that will be allowed a much longer chain than heretofore. And such will be the greatness of his power that it will seem to many that he is entirely loose. He will be so far unshackled and unchained that his power will deceive all nations, even the world. Let's stop right here. Let's look at the state of the world right now compared to the 1800s. Let's compare it to what it was like in the early 2000s or the 90s or the 80s. The world has lost its doggone mind. Things that never would have been accepted back then are now commonplace and they're promoted. All sorts of things. I'm not referring to one particular issue. Everything ranging from morality to drugs, violence, worshiping yourself, like all this encouragement to be a prideful person and care about yourself and take care of yourself and all this kind of stuff. Do what you want to do. Don't worry about your family. Do whatever makes you happy. It is crazy right now compared to how it was even just a decade ago. But the further back you go, the more different it is from what it is now. He has definitely been working his sorceries and enchantments. And if you didn't know any better, you would think that the entire world is drunk right now. All right, let's continue. And even God himself, the true God, will contribute to put means and instruments in his way and at hand for his use, so that he can have a full trial of his strength and cunning with all the deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that perish. It is not to be expected that Satan will carry on his great warfare against Christ and his saints by means of any one religion exclusively. Okay, so now we're not talking just about individuals, the Antichrist. Now we're talking about entire organizations, right? And we do have this concept that comes from the Book of Mormon, which I'm going to do another video about, of the great and abominable church. But even that we know is not a single religion, but it is a large organization. It's a group of organizations, philosophies, that all work together under the command of Satan. So let's read that again. It is not to be expected that Satan will carry on his great warfare against Christ and his saints by means of any one religion exclusively. It is not the papal or Protestant religion alone that you have need to fear, but the great and abominable church, which you should expect to encounter, is Antichrist. Whatever exalts and opposes itself to God, that is Antichrist, whether it is a civil or religious power. But the most formidable power that will be arrayed against Christ and his saints in the last days will consist in the revelations of Satan. These revelations of Satan will come through every medium and channel by which the cunning and power of Satan can be brought to bear against the saints and their Lord. It is a great mistake to suppose that Satan is altogether a religious personage. No, far from this. He is a politician, a philosopher, an erudite scholar, a linguist. And by the way, speaking of linguists, it makes me think how language these days is so manipulated. There are things that I hear my daughter coming home saying that essentially things from pop culture that is rubbed off on her and her peers, where she doesn't even know what she's saying. But for those that have eyes to see and ears to hear, you know where that comes from. But they're none the wiser. They're just kids. But Satan knows that he can confuse people by using language and pitting people, like groups against other groups, and using nicknames and all this kind of stuff. It's wild right now. So anyway, he is a politician, a philosopher, an erudite scholar, a linguist, a metaphysician, a military commander, a prince, a god, a necromancer, an enchanter, a diviner, a magician, a sorcerer, a prophet, and, if it were not railing, a clergyman and liar from the beginning. With these universal endowments, he has never hitherto made a full and grand exhibition of himself, as it remains for him to do. But the Lord, who gave him an opportunity to try his battery upon good old Job, is fully designing to give him sufficient apparatus to deceive all the nations that love not the truth and have pleasure in unrighteousness. His signs and tokens are as ancient as the apostasy of Cain, as varied as will suit the secret designs of all ages. Through him, men learn how to become observers of times and seasons with great skill and astonishing accuracy. Listen to this. And there are people, unfortunately, in the church that get involved in this kind of thing. He presides over the arts of astrology, clairvoyance, mesmerism, electrobiology, which I don't know. I'm sure people would disagree, but it makes me think of energy healers, and all auguries and divinations. Being prince of the power of the air, He understands aeronautic and steam navigation, and he can compose and combine the various elements through the cooperation of them that believe in him with far more than human skill. Now, don't doubt what I say concerning this matter, but rather read the history of his skillful exploits and his mighty power as they are recorded in the Old and New Testaments. Take a Bible and concordance, if you have any faith in the Bible left, in an age when the Bible is perverted beyond all other books, and read attentively for yourselves, and you will there learn that I am telling you the truth. Now, there is a greater destruction coming upon the wicked nations of the earth than was ever experienced by Pharaoh at the Red Sea. But before the destruction can be made manifest, men's hearts will be hardened, and wickedness will rise to a more overtowering height than many bygone generations have been allowed to witness. God, through his prophet, will roar out of Zion. His voice will be heard in spite of all the confusion and indignant opposition from many nations. After the testimony of his servants has been proclaimed to all nations as a witness, then shall the scene of the end come. And great shall be the scene. The devil, in the last stage of desperation, will take such a preeminent lead in literature, politics, philosophy, and religion. And it feels like what he's describing here is like right now, this preeminent lead in all these different things. In wars, famines, pestilences, earthquakes, thunderings, and lightnings, setting cities in conflagration, etc., that mighty kings and powerful nations will be constrained to fall down and worship him. And they will marvel at his great power and wonder after him with great astonishment, for his signs and wonders will be among all nations. Men will be raised for the express purpose of furthering the designs and marvelous works of the devil. Every description of curious and mysterious arts that penetrate beyond the common pale of human sagacity and wisdom will be studied and practiced beyond what has been known by mere mortals. The great capabilities of the elements of fire, air, earth, and water will be brought into requisition by cunning men under superior cunning of the prince and god of this world. And inflated with the knowledge of these wonderful arts and powers, men will become boasters, heady, high-minded, proud, and despisers of that which is good. But the God who is above all and over all, and who ruleth in the armies of heaven and amongst the inhabitants of the earth, will not be a silent observer of such spiritual wickedness in high places and among the rulers of the darkness of this world, nor the master spirits of wickedness of all ages and of all worlds visible and invisible will be arrayed in the rebellious ranks before the closing scene shall transpire. Now notice here, he's talking about the fact that Satan is the Antichrist when we're talking about the man of sin, he who's going to sit in the temple of God and fancy himself God in front of everybody. He does have human agents. Yes. There are many antichrists with a lowercase a. Many who learn like he's saying right here, these arts and sciences and these different things, right? Satan gives power through his own way to his human agents, and uses secret combinations to ensure that they do what he wants them to do. Okay, you do this for me, I will give you this. I'll show you how to, do this, how to get power, how to get rich, whatever. And there's people that fall for that. And that's just how it is. But there is no single main Antichrist before the second coming. There's not. It's Satan. And unfortunately, there's many antichrists. Now, just at this time, God will come out of his hiding place and vex the nations in his hot displeasure. By the mouth of his prophet, he will rebuke strong nations afar off, notwithstanding their strong armies and great miracles and cunning arts. His servant, the prophet in Zion, will have a marvelous boldness to rebuke them and to lay down before them in plainness and inflexible firmness the law of the Lord. As Moses laid down the law to Pharaoh and continued to multiply evils and judgments until he made an utter end of Pharaoh and the Egyptians, even so will the living God prescribe the line of conduct to be pursued and the penalties of violation to great and mighty nations until they rally around the ensign established upon the mountains and go up to the house of the God of Jacob to learn his ways, or are utterly overwhelmed in keen anguish and ruin. The ways of the God of Jacob are easily recognized in these days of general wickedness. It is true that they are clearly revealed in the scriptures of truth and by a living priesthood of inspired men, yet they have been so long and so grossly perverted by the precepts and opinions of a hireling ministry that doubts and contentions have sprung up in every land, and the plainest and simplest truths are denied, abrogated, or accounted obsolete. God is not allowed to speak from the heavens by the mouths of prophets as in former days. Notwithstanding there is much preaching and praying, still there is a virtual acknowledgement amongst all nations that God, as he was known unto the patriarchs and prophets of old, has forsaken the earth, and men are left to discover the way to heaven by the light of nature or the misty nebula of a hireling priesthood. And it is a fact undeniable that infidels in the school of nature have more true piety towards the living God than the hireling ministry of Christendom have. Hence, priests are doing so much, often unwittingly, to blind the eyes of the people so that they shall not see the approaching crisis in its true character until the catastrophe is completed. And great Babylon and her lofty cities, great wealth, princely merchants, chief captains, and mighty sovereigns are laid low in one general ruin. O ye great and strong nations, ye philosophers and religionists, ye spiritual mediums, and ye revelators sitting upon thrones over great nations, how can you fulfill the prophecies that are so clearly revealed concerning the destruction of the last days? Ye perhaps marvel that the great men and governors over 127 provinces in ancient Babylon, with a brave monarch at their head, should have been such firm believers in the astrologers, magicians, and interpreters of dreams in their days. But marvel not, for when the great power of the like class of persons under the direction of Satan shall be brought to bear in your own day, the delusion will be so much stronger that princes, presidents, governors, and chief captains will be constrained to bow to it. All right, and I think I'm going to end right there. So I feel like this really captures really well how the church thinks about the Antichrist power, with Satan at its head, with many mortal antichrists, and then in general, the great and abominable church. And that's essentially just how it works. Through the rest of this playlist, you're going to see many other quotes, more recent quotes that go right along with this, and you'll see how the church interprets and understands these scriptures differently from what other Christian denominations do.